Significant weather changes right across Australia over the next week. We're re-looking at gusty winds, sharp temperature swings, severe thunderstorms in some areas, and a major shift in conditions from north to south. If you've been dealing with the heat and humidity up north or waiting for decent rain in parts of the southeast, this forecast matters. I've been examining the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, cross-checking multiple weather models and monitoring current conditions right across the continent. What we're seeing is a classic setup where tropical moisture up north collides with cooler air pushing up from the Southern Ocean. That interaction creates the conditions for some significant weather over the days ahead. Let us start with where things stand right now, because understanding the current pattern helps explain what is coming. Right now across Queensland, particularly southeast Queensland and the coastal regions, it's been hot and humid all week. Brisbane been copping 38 degrees with high humidity, making it feel even worse. That warm, sticky air mass has been parked over the region and it is uncomfortable. Further north around Cairns and the tropical coast, temperatures are sitting around 35 degrees with that typical wet season build-up. The moisture is there, the instability is building. Compare that to what's happening down south. Tasmania saw -2 degrees this morning in some areas. Frost across parts of Hobart's northern suburbs and through the Midlands. That cold air is already well established across the southern states. Western Victoria's been dealing with gusty conditions and temperatures struggling to reach the mid-teens in exposed areas. Perth and much of Western Australia has been bone dry. 3 months with bugger all rain in many areas. The gardens are struggling, dams are getting low, and farmers are watching the forecast closely. It's a similar story around parts of inland New South Wales and South Australia. Adelaide's had some pleasant weather recently, but the dry pattern is a concern for many areas. Sydney's been waiting for decent rain. The catchments need it. Across New South Wales, generally, it's been a mixed bag with warm days, but not the extreme heat that Queensland's been experiencing. Now here is what is driving all of this and why it matters for the forecast ahead. We've still got the remnants of what was a tropical cyclone sitting off the Queensland coast. It has weakened significantly, but it has left behind a large area of low pressure that is producing thunderstorms and heavy rain around the coastline and pushing inland. That low pressure is interacting with a moisture-rich environment, which means we're seeing shower and storm activity that's more widespread than you'd typically expect from a weakened system. At the same time, down south, we've got a high-pressure system positioned south of Tasmania and South Australia. That high is doing two things. First, it is pulling in that cold air from the Southern Ocean, which is why temperatures have been so low across Tasmania and southern Victoria. Second, it's creating what we call a squash zone with the low pressure to the north. When you see those isobars, those white lines on the weather map, packed tightly together, that is your signal that winds are going to be strong. The closer those lines, the stronger the wind gradient, and that S, exactly what we are seeing develop through the southeast over the next few days. The other feature worth noting is that we've got relatively low air pressure right across most of Australia. That purple shading you see on the maps covering the continent indicates lower pressure, which is favourable for producing showers and thunderstorms in the tropical regions. But down in the south, where the high pressure is dominant, it means we are looking at mostly dry conditions with that gusty southeasterly flow. Right, let's get into the day-by-day breakdown because this pattern evolves significantly as we move through the week. Wednesday is when things start to ramp up in terms of wind. That squash zone between the low pressure over the northern two-thirds of Australia and the high pressure to the south really tightens up. We're re-looking at gusty conditions developing through the mountains around the ACT, coming out into Victoria and extending through parts of South Australia. Now, we're not talking about severe gales widespread, but gusts could reach gale force in exposed areas, particularly through the Victorian Alps, around the Great Dividing Range and through the southern ranges of New South Wales. For those of you with properties in these areas, or if you are travelling through, it's worth being aware that it will be a blustery day. The concerning part is that we've got mostly dry conditions combined with these gusty winds. That is not a good combination if you are in fire-prone areas. The fire danger rating will be elevated across parts of Victoria and South Australia. I am not saying we're re-looking at catastrophic conditions, but it's worth checking the latest from your local fire service. For Queensland, Wednesday brings more widespread thunderstorms. Some areas could see 60 to 70 millimetres in just a day, particularly through central Queensland and parts of the southeast. These aren't isolated showers. We're talking about areas of heavy rain that could cause localised flooding in low-lying areas. New South Wales sees a few thunderstorms pushing in, particularly through the northern half of the state. The ACT and southern tablelands might catch a shower or two, but nothing significant. Victoria and Tasmania remain mostly dry with just a few coastal showers, and those pale blue shading on the rainfall maps tells you we're not expecting much. Thursday is a particularly gusty day, especially for Victoria and South Australia. That southeasterly wind really picks up through the afternoon. Again, we're re-looking at gusts potentially reaching gale force in exposed locations. But more broadly, it is just going to be a blustery, uncomfortable day if you are outside. The dry, windy conditions continue to be a concern for fire weather. If you're in Victoria, particularly eastern Victoria, the combination of low humidity, warm temperatures and strong winds creates elevated fire danger. It's worth having your fire plan ready, even if we are not seeing catastrophic ratings. These are the conditions where small fires can spread quickly. Here is something important for Thursday afternoon. We're re-looking at the potential for severe thunderstorms developing across eastern Victoria, the ACT and parts of New South Wales. I am talking about storms with large hail, damaging wind gusts and the risk of flash flooding in localised areas. Now, this is where the forecast gets interesting. These severe thunderstorms have the potential to drop some useful rain in areas that desperately need it. But the flip side is you've also got the risk of dry lightning, which can start fires, and you've got the hail and wind damage to deal with. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. The far north of Queensland also sees severe thunderstorm potential, but they are more isolated up there. Central Queensland continues to see heavy rain, with some areas potentially getting 150 to 200 millimetres through the day. That's a lot of rain in a short period, and it will cause flooding in some areas. Western Australia and the Northern Territory remain relatively quiet on Thursday. Just your typical afternoon thunderstorms through the Kimberley and across parts of the top end. Nothing particularly unusual for this time of year. By Friday, we've got a couple of low-pressure systems worth monitoring up around the Coral Sea near Vanuatu. Both of these warrant close attention. One of them, the low near Queensland, is producing more significant rain. Some areas of Queensland could see 150 millimetres in just a day. We're re-seeing that monsoon pattern really establish itself. The rain extends down into northern New South Wales as well, with coastal areas potentially seeing some heavy falls. That low pressure near the Queensland-New South Wales border continues to create that squash zone with the isobars. The white lines on the map are squeezed tight, which means strong winds continue through the mountains, the Victorian Alps, around the Great Dividing Range and through the ACT. The heaviest rain on Friday pushes into the southeast corner. Some areas might see 60 to 70 millimetres through the day, which would be welcome in many spots. Most places, though, you are looking at 5 to 10 millimetres. It's not a drought breaker, but it's something. South Australia sits in between it all on Friday. Southeasterly winds, just a couple of coastal showers, nothing substantial. You might get the odd thunderstorm develop, but it's not likely to be widespread. The heat in Western Australia starts to push down past Bunbury by Friday afternoon. If you're in Perth or Fremantle, you'll feel that southerly breeze coming through and temperatures will drop a bit. But the heat then shifts across to areas around Esperance. Saturday brings continued monitoring of those two tropical lows to the northeast. They re-close enough that the models are having difficulty determining whether they'll merge into one stronger system or remain separate. Either way, it's something to watch, particularly if you've got interest in the Coral Sea or you're remonitoring cyclone development. The main feature for Saturday, though, is that windy easterly flow coming off the Tasman Sea into the southeast corner of Australia. If you're on the coastline in New South Wales or Victoria, temperatures want to be especially hot because you've got that maritime air flowing in. But inland areas, even though that red boundary line showing the heat is north of you, those gusty winds coming over the Great Dividing Range can actually lift temperatures further. It's a FHN effect where the air warms as it descends the ranges. We're still looking at the potential for showers and thunderstorms across Victoria. Fingers crossed, some of that rain falls where it's needed. It's not a huge amount forecast, but sometimes you can get lucky with a good cell developing over your area. High pressure sits just south of Tasmania, which is why that southeasterly corner remains windy. Some gusts around gale force are possible, particularly through elevated areas. The heat in Western Australia moves along by Saturday. You'll see a southerly breeze coming in for Bunbury, Fremantle and Perth. Temperatures drop away, but that heat pushes further east now, around Esperance and into South Australia. Sunday, the heat continues to push across into South Australia. We've got that big storm system well southwest of Australia, bringing all that polar air up from the Southern Ocean. It's far enough away that it's not causing major issues for Western Australia, but it's close enough that we are seeing that cooler air beginning to influence the weather pattern. Those winds continue blowing through New South Wales, the ACT, Victoria and parts of South Australia. That gusty easterly just keeps going, and by Sunday we've got this large low in the north that the models are trying to work out. Is it one tropical cyclone or two weaker low pressure zones? We're re-monitoring that very closely. By Monday, the current modelling shows it splitting apart. Yesterday, S-runs had it as one tropical cyclone, but today, S-data suggests it may split into two separate systems. One potentially becomes a tropical cyclone just south of New Caledonia. The other might also intensify, but these systems are so close together that when I update you again on Thursday, they might have merged back into one low or they might have completely separated. That SY can give you definitive information yet about what is happening in the Coral Sea and whether it LL tracked down towards the Tasman. What we can say with more confidence is that those easterly winds continue into the southeast corner of Queensland all the way down through New South Wales. Eastern parts of New South Wales want to be as hot because the airflow is coming off the sea rather than from inland. That is a significant change from the pattern we've been seeing. Here is something else that matters, particularly for Victoria. The smoke from bushfires that has been blowing off towards New Zealand will now shift direction and push over towards South Australia. If you're in Adelaide or areas to the west, you might notice smoke haze increasing over the next few days as those winds change direction. Let me show you the rainfall totals expected over the next 7 days because this really illustrates the contrast across the country. Queensland, all those thunderstorms and heavy rain events really start to add up. Some areas are looking at over 200 millimetres through the week. That is significant rainfall, and in areas that have been dry, it'll be welcome. But in areas that are already saturated, it could cause flooding issues. Around New South Wales, particularly the coastal areas, you could see 100 millimetres or more if you cop a severe thunderstorm or two. But look at the jump when you cross from the ACT over the ranges into southern New South Wales around Wagga Wagga, completely dry once you get to the western side of the divide. Victoria unfortunately remains much drier. You might pick up 10 to 20 millimetres in some areas, but broadly speaking, it's a disappointing week for rainfall if you are in Victoria. Same story for most of South Australia, Western Australia and the Northern Territory. Just a few showers around the Kimberley and the top end, some isolated thunderstorms, but nothing widespread. It really is the eastern side of Australia seeing the most significant wet weather over the next 7 days. Now let us talk about what this means practically because that is what matters. If you are in Queensland, particularly central Queensland and the southeast, you need to be prepared for heavy rainfall and potential flooding. That's not fear-mongering, that's just the reality of what happens when you get 150 to 200 millimetres in a short period. Low-lying areas, creek crossings, areas with poor drainage, they'll be affected. If you're replanning to travel, check road conditions before you head out. The Queensland Traffic website and local council pages will have updates on road closures. If you come across floodwater on the road, don't drive through it. I know everyone's heard this before, but every year people get caught out. If it's flooded, forget it. That's the SES slogan, and it's worth remembering. For those with livestock, make sure animals have access to high ground. Check your fences because floodwater can wash them out. If you've got hay or feed stored in low areas, consider moving it to higher ground now before the rain arrives. For New South Wales, particularly the northern half and coastal areas, similar advice applies. Be prepared for heavy rain and thunderstorms. The severe thunderstorm risk on Thursday and Friday means you could see large hail, which can damage vehicles and property. If you've got cars parked outside, consider moving them undercover if possible. Secure loose items around the property, outdoor furniture, trampolines, anything that could blow around in strong winds. The ACT and surrounding areas, you are in a tricky spot. You might get some useful rain from those thunderstorms, but you've also got the risk of dry lightning and strong winds. The fire danger is elevated, not extreme, but elevated. If you're replanning any outdoor burning, check the fire ban status first. Total fire ban means no fires whatsoever, not even a small campfire. Victoria, this is a difficult forecast for you. You need rain, dams are getting low in many areas, but the forecast isn't delivering much. The dry, windy conditions through Wednesday and Thursday are a concern for fire weather. Eastern Victoria in particular needs to be alert. The fire danger rating will be elevated, possibly reaching severe in some areas. If you're in a bushfire-prone area, now is the time to check your fire plan. Clear gutters, remove leaf litter from around the house, check that your hoses work and reach all parts of the property. I'm not suggesting we're re-looking at another Black Saturday, but these are the conditions where fires can start and spread quickly if they do get going. The potential for severe thunderstorms Thursday afternoon might bring some rain, and that would be welcome, but there's also the risk of dry lightning, which can start fires in areas that are already dry. It's a bit of a worry, to be honest. Keep an eye on the warnings from the Bureau and from the CFA. South Australia, similar story to Victoria, mostly dry, gusty winds, elevated fire danger in some areas. Check your local fire service for the latest fire danger ratings and any total fire ban days. Tasmania, you are dealing with cold conditions now and they continue through the week. Nothing particularly unusual for this time of year, but if you're in alpine areas or the Central Plateau, those overnight temperatures are well below zero. Protect any pipes that might freeze, make sure livestock have adequate shelter, and if you are heading to the high country, be prepared for winter conditions even though we're not officially in winter yet. Western Australia, you continue with that dry pattern. I know many of you are waiting for rain, and unfortunately this forecast isn't delivering it. Just a few showers around the southwest, nothing substantial. The heat moves around through the week, but it's not extreme heat, just warm conditions for this time of year. Northern Territory, fairly typical weather for the season. Afternoon thunderstorms, warm and humid, nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual build-up conditions as we head towards the wet season proper. A couple of other points worth mentioning. The temperature swings you re-seeing, particularly in the southeast, can affect your health. Warm one day, cool the next, then warm again. People have been crook for weeks with flu, headaches, sinus issues. It's not just you, it's the weather pattern. That settles down a bit after Thursday's change moves through. For those with asthma or respiratory conditions, the combination of temperature changes, wind-blown dust in dry areas, and potential smoke haze means you should have your medication up to date and your action plan ready. The marine forecast is also worth noting if you've got boats or you're replanning fishing trips. That gusty southeasterly wind through the southeast means rough conditions on the water, particularly Friday through Sunday. Small craft warnings are likely. Winds could reach 40 to 45 knots in some areas, seas building to 3 to 4 metres. It's not weather for small boats. Up in Queensland waters, the unsettled conditions mean variable winds and thunderstorm activity. Just be aware that conditions can change quickly when you've got this much instability around. Looking at the longer-term pattern, beyond Monday, there is still a fair bit of uncertainty. Those low-pressure systems in the Coral Sea could develop into tropical cyclones, or they might just remain weak lows. The Bureau will be monitoring them closely, and if cyclone formation looks likely, you will see tropical cyclone watches or warnings issued. The pattern through the second half of next week looks like it might settle down a bit for the southeast, but Queensland could continue seeing unsettled weather. For Victoria and South Australia, the dry pattern looks like continuing, which is not good news if you're waiting for rain. That's the forecast for the next week. It is a complex pattern with a lot of moving parts. Significant weather for Queensland and northern New South Wales, gusty and mostly dry for the southeast, elevated fire danger in some areas, and temperature swings that affect most of the east coast. My advice is to check the Bureau of Meteorology website regularly for updates. The warnings can change quickly when you've got severe thunderstorms and rapidly developing systems. Have your emergency kit ready if you are in areas at risk of flooding or fire. Check on your neighbours, particularly elderly folks who might need a hand preparing. This isn't a time for panic, but it is a time to be prepared and to take the warnings seriously. You've lived through significant weather events before. You know how to handle these situations. Just make sure you've got your plans in place and you're reacting on the information as it comes through. I'll be back with another update on Thursday. No video tomorrow as mentioned earlier. If conditions change significantly or we see those tropical lows develop into something more concerning, there might be an additional update, but otherwise I'll see you Thursday. Stay safe, look after your mates,